Socialism in the United Kingdom is generally thought to stretch back to the 19th century from roots arising in the aftermath of the English Civil War. Notions of socialism in Great Britain have taken many different forms, from the utopian philanthropism of Robert Owen through to the reformist electoral project enshrined in the birth of the Labour Party. Origins. The Reformation occurred later in Britain than in most of mainland Europe. As in the rest of Europe, various liberal thinkers such as Thomas More became prominent. But another important current was the emergence of the Radical Puritans, who wanted to reform both religion and the nation. The Puritans were oppressed by both the monarchy and by the established church. Eventually these pressures exploded in the violent social revolution known as the English Civil War, which many Marxists see as the world's first successful bourgeois revolution. After the war, several proto-socialist groups emerged. The most important of these groups were the Levelers, who advocated electoral reform, universal trial by jury, progressive taxation and the abolition of the monarchy and aristocracy, and of censorship. This was strongly opposed by Oliver Cromwell's government, who also persecuted the moderate reformist group, the Fifth Monarchy men, and the radical utopian group, the Diggers. The 19th century, the Industrial Revolution, and Robert Owen. The Industrial Revolution, the transition from a farming economy to an industrial one, began in the UK over 30 years before the rest of the world. Textile mills and coal mines sprang up across the whole country, and peasants were taken from the fields to work down the mines, or into the dark, satanic mills, the chimneys of which blacked the sky over Lancashire and West Yorkshire. Appalling conditions for workers, combined with support for the French Revolution, turned some intellectuals to socialism. The pioneering work of Robert Owen, a Welsh radical, at New Lanark in Scotland, is sometimes credited as being the birth of British socialism. He stopped employing children under the age of 10, and instead arranged for their education, and improved the working and living conditions of all his workers. He also lobbied Parliament over child labour, and helped to create the cooperative movement, before attempting to create a utopian community at New Harmony. Trades union. The trade union movement in Britain gradually developed from the medieval guild system. Unions were subject to often severe repression until 1824, but were already widespread in cities such as London. Workplace militancy had also manifested itself as Luddism, and had been prominent in struggles such as the Radical War in Scotland in 1820, when 60,000 workers went on a general strike, which was soon crushed. From 1830 on, attempts were made to set up national general unions, most notably Robert Owen's Grand National Consolidated Trades Union in 1834, which attracted a range of socialists from Owenites to revolutionaries. It played a part in the protests after the Tolpuddle martyrs case, but soon collapsed. Militants turned to Chartism, the aims of which were supported by most socialists, although none appear to have played leading roles. More permanent trade unions were established from the 1850s, better resourced but often less radical. The London Trades Council was founded in 1860, and the Sheffield outrages spurred the establishment of the Trades Union Congress in 1868. Union membership grew as unskilled and women workers were unionized, and socialists such as Tom Mann played an increasingly prominent role. Christian socialism. The rise of non-conformist religions, in particular Methodism, played a large role in the development of trade unions and of British socialism. The influence of the radical chapels was strongly felt among some industrial workers, especially miners and those in the north of England and Wales. The first group, calling itself Christian Socialists, formed in 1848 under the leadership of Frederick Dennis Dennis and Morris. Its membership mainly consisted of Chartists. The group became dormant after only 6 years, but there was a considerable revival of Christian socialism in the 1880s, and a number of groups sprang up. Ultimately, Christian socialists dominated the leadership of the Independent Labour Party, including James Keir Hardie. The Chartist movement. The Chartist movement of the 1830s and 1840s was the first mass revolutionary movement of the British working class. Mass meetings and demonstrations involving millions of proletariat and petty bourgeois were held throughout the country for years. The Chartists published several petitions to the British Parliament, the most famous of which was called the People's Charter in 1842, which demanded universal suffrage for men, the secret ballot, removal of property qualifications for members of Parliament, salaries for members of Parliament, electoral districts representing equal numbers of people, annually elected parliaments. The government subsequently subjected the Chartists to brutal reprisals and arrested their leaders. The remaining party then split as a result of a divide in tactics. The Moral Force Party believed in bureaucratic reformism, while the Physical Force Party believed in workers' reformism. The Chartist movement's reformist goals, although not immediately and directly attained, were gradually achieved. In the same year as the People's Charter was created, the British Parliament instead responded by passing the 1842 Mining Act, carefully valving the steam of the working class movement. British Parliament reduced the working day to 10 hours in 1847. Source: Encyclopedia of Marxism, available under the terms of GFDL. Marx and Early Marxism. Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels worked in England, and they influenced small émigré groups, including the Communist League. Engels' Condition of the Working Class in England became a popular expose of conditions for workers, but initially Marxism had little impact among Britain's working class. The first nominally Marxist organization was the Social Democratic Federation, founded in 1882. Engels refused to support the organization, although Marx's daughter Eleanor joined. The party soon split, with the Socialist League of William Morris becoming divided between anarchists and Marxists such as Morris and Eleanor Marx. A much later split produced the Socialist Party of Great Britain, Britain's oldest existing socialist party, and the Socialist Labour Party. Although Marxism had some impact in Britain, it was far less than in many other European countries, with philosophers such as John Ruskin and John Stuart Mill having much greater influence. Some non-Marxists theorize that this was because Britain was amongst the most democratic countries of Europe of the period. The ballot box provided an instrument for change, so a parliamentary, reformist socialism seemed a more promising route than elsewhere. Lib Labs and the ILP, the Reform League, which was founded in 1865 to press for universal male suffrage and vote by secret ballot, qualified its demand for suffrage with the phrase "registered and residential" shortly before the passing of the 1867 Reform Act. This qualifier excluded a great number of British labourers, casual workers, and unemployed. The change in policy has been attributed to donations received by the League from Liberal Party politicians in 1866 and 1867. At the time, Marx wrote that he and Engels had been betrayed in the Reform League where, against our wishes, have made compromises with the bourgeoisie. However, a great deal of collaboration came to exist between the Liberal Party and the leaders of the labour movement, though Marx saw these as effective bribes by the bourgeoisie and the government. The 1867 Reform Act passed and enfranchised roughly 3 million people, around half of whom were working class. This was extended to 5 million by the Representation of the People Act 1884, which extended the householders' franchise. The Liberal Party was worried about the prospect of a socialist party taking the bulk of the working class vote, while the great rivals, the Conservatives, initiated occasional intrigues to encourage socialist candidates to stand against the Liberals. In 1874, the Liberals agreed not to put candidates against Thomas Burt and Alexander MacDonald, two miners' leaders who were standing for Parliament. Both were elected and became known as Liberal Labour, or Lib Labs for short. Other miners' leaders entered Parliament via the same route. In 1888, Robert Cunningham Graham, the MP for Lanarkshire North West since the 1886 general election, left the Liberals and formed his own independent Scottish Labour Party, becoming the first socialist MP in the Parliament of the United Kingdom. In the United Kingdom general election 1892, Keir Hardie, another Liberal politician who had joined Cunningham Graham in the Scottish Labour Party, was elected as an independent Labour MP, and this gave him the spur to found a UK-wide independent Labour Party in 1893.